Look at these two chairs. This is the iconic IKEA Pohang chair, and this is the Arctic Armchair 406. They both look almost identical, but this one cost 1800 euros and the Pohang just 80 euros. And it's not just this chair. This tulip table cost 2500 euros, while this IKEA Dockstar only 160 euros. This Arctic stool cost 300 euros and this IKEA Frosta was just 10 euros. So same aesthetics at a fraction of the price. But unlike every other brand that gets destroyed for copying,
Zara is called out. She claims that Zara has stolen her artwork.
Well, that ignited huge backlash from the creative community.
Local artisans are calling out the brand for copying their work without giving any credit.
Apple is accusing Samsung of exactly copying its flagship iPhone.
Is this the worst thing that Zara has done?
IKEA gets celebrated for that. It's the most visited furniture retailer on the planet, with over 700 stores and 45 billion euros of revenue. Because IKEA gives you the luxury of building a beautiful home without going broke. They call it democratic design. Maybe they genuinely believe that good design should be accessible to everyone, and they're doing what no one else has the guts to do. Or maybe this is just an elegant excuse for copying. So in this video, we're going to explore how IKEA engineers some of the most iconic design in the world to a fraction of the price, what their philosophy of democratic design actually means, and how can you do the same with your own products. And to answer all of that, we first need to understand that why IKEA started using paper instead of wood. When you walk into IKEA, you'll notice that the same product comes at a very different price points. They have the same shape, same size and same design, but the only difference is the material. It can be cardboard, engineered wood, or actual solid wood. But it wasn't always like this. Initially, every IKEA product was made from wood. Actual solid wood.
Åh, vilken fantastisk förändring. När jag kom igår kväll och såg detta underbara team jobba, så tänkte jag att den här gången blev vi i alla fall inte färdiga. Men det blev vi i alla fall.
Ingvar Kamprad, the founder of IKEA, was born as a farmer in Småland, Sweden. But at heart, he was an entrepreneur. So from a very young age, he started selling matchboxes at 3 times the profit. Then he moved from matchboxes to fish, to Christmas cards, to pencils, and by the age of 12, he was already running a profitable business selling fountain pens. And then at some point, he realized that why do I need to buy pens, hold the inventory, and then sell them when he can just connect buyers with sellers and make a profit? So he registered his first trading company and named it IKEA. It was a combination of initials of his name, his farm, and his hometown. So the name of the company was also the address of the company. He also launched a catalog of the products he was selling and called it IKEA News, so people can see the products and order them by mail. And everything was going great. He was selling a lot of pens and making a lot of profits. Then one day he realized that maybe he should move to some high ticketing products, something that he can sell in less volume but make high profits. And he looked at competitors, and one product category stood out: furnitures. Småland was full of timber. So Ingvar went to the local craftsmen and made them a simple offer. He would bring them more customers than they ever had, but on one condition: they had to ship the furniture themselves. And they happily agreed. So he put 3 pieces of furniture in IKEA News. They sold well, so he kept adding more and more. IKEA was growing fast. So fast that the whole Swedish furniture industry felt threatened. So they went to the suppliers and asked them to stop selling to IKEA. This was the moment when Ingvar decided that IKEA will now design their own furniture. And they made this, the LÖVET table. It was a leaf-shaped side table with 3 angled legs and brass-covered feet. It was made from jacaranda, a rich, dark and tropical hardwood. And then, on one fine evening, designer of the LÖVET, Julius Lundgren, was trying to load the LÖVET into his car after a catalog photoshoot. But to fit it into the trunk, he unscrewed the legs and suddenly the table was flat and it slid right in. Ingvar saw that and he thought, what if we always did it this way? And that was the moment the flat pack revolution was born. It was easier to ship, easier to stack, and the customer assembles it at home. But flat pack created a new problem. See, solid wood doesn't like being flat. It warps, it swells, it moves with humidity, and when you're shipping millions of pieces across Europe, those problems multiply fast. So IKEA started asking different questions. Not what this furniture should be made of, but what does this furniture actually need to do? So through the 1960s and 70s, IKEA started shifting to particle board, compressed wood chips and sawdust bound with resin. And the best example of this was the Billy bookcase. It was launched in 1978 and was made of particle board with a foil veneer. It was flat, lightweight and completely recyclable. IKEA has sold more than 120 million of these bookcases. Then, in 1979, the design team came to Ingvar with a new product, a small side table. Simple, colorful, something that people could buy on impulse, also made from the same particle board. He looked at the prototype, picked it up, and said it's too heavy. And then he asked about the price. The team said an approximate of 30 euros. And immediately he said no, it's just too expensive. Figured out a way to make it for only 10 euros. So the team started looking for a solution and eventually found one, but not in a furniture factory, in a door factory. Door manufacturers had been using a technique for years to make a hollow core door that was light but rigid. A thin outer shell and inside paper folded into hexagons. A honeycomb structure that gave the door its strength without any of the weight. The same geometry used by bees to make beehive. The IKEA team borrowed that technique and applied it to the tabletop. And the result was this, the IKEA leg table. It was light enough to carry with one hand, strong enough to hold 25 kilograms, and cheap enough to sell for less than 10 euros. And when Ingvar saw it, he immediately understood that this was just not a table. It can be anything. It can be shelves, TV benches, wardrobes, anything where you need a large flat surface without the weight and the cost of a solid wood. The honeycomb eventually became IKEA's secret weapon. Think about this amazing journey from the LÖVET to the Billy bookcase and finally the leg table. It gave IKEA the ability to keep prices low without making things worse during inflation. Whether you just need basic functionality or you want something that looks premium, IKEA has always something in the store for you, and they call it democratic design.
If you want to change the world, maybe it's not just good to focus on making stuff, but what we really want to do is to make things better, isn't it?
Democratic design. It has 5 pillars: form, function, quality, sustainability, and low price. And on paper, that sounds obvious. Of course, a good product should look good, work well, last long, be sustainable, and be affordable. But if you look closely, all of these things are like at constantly war with each other. You want better form? That costs more. You want higher quality? That also costs more. You want it sustainable? It costs more too. Every time you push one pillar, the price go up. And once the price go up, it stops being democratic. That's why the most important pillar of IKEA is low price. Ingvar famously said that to design a desk which may cost only £1,000 is easy for a furniture designer, but to design a functional and good desk which shall cost only £50 can only be done by the very best. That's why when IKEA sends a brief to a designer, the first thing that it says is that this product will sell for this amount of money on the shelf. And now you build something worthy of that. That's called target costing. And it completely changes what design means. Because now Every decision of material, shape, joinery, packaging has to earn its place. Nothing exists just because it looks good. Everything has to justify the cost. And it might sound obvious to you, but in most product companies, that's not the case. To calculate the price, they start with the product, its materials, manufacturing, R&D, and then put the profits on top of that, and that becomes the final price. And IKEA's entire philosophy is built around refusing to make that choice. But how do they actually do it? Let's look at each pillar one by one. Form is the easiest one to get wrong. Most people think that form means make it look good. But for IKEA, form has one extra constraint that changes everything. It has to pack flat. That's why you'll notice that almost every IKEA product has the same design language. Clean lines, no ornate curves, no complex joinery, because curves are expensive to manufacture and impossible to stack. And if the curve is three-dimensional, then it doesn't pack flat. Like if you see traditional bookcase or cabinets, all the crown molding, carved edges and curved top make manufacturing longer and flat packing harder. On the other hand, IKEA cabinets like the Kallax has none of that. It has flat top, square edges and straight sides. It ships as flat panels and a bag of hardware. And same goes for the Billy bookcase or these kitchen cabinets. And in modern homes like in Europe or in the West, the Kallax doesn't look cheap, it looks considered. Because straight lines photograph well, they sit flush against the wall and stacks cleanly with other furniture. But IKEA can't always do this. Some furnitures are just defined by their curves. Like a wingback chair cannot be made with straight lines, because then it would stop being a wingback. So when straight lines are not possible, IKEA's second move is to divide. This is Strandmon, IKEA's wingback chair. And next to a traditional wingback, they look almost identical. Same high back, same wide arm, same silhouette, but a traditional wingback is one continuous upholstered form. The backs, the arms, the seat, all built on a fixed internal frame and wrapped in fabric together. You cannot take it apart without destroying the upholstery. The Strandmon solves this by treating each part as a separate problem. The back is a padded shell, the seat is a separate cushioned unit, and the wings are also separate. And of course, the legs can detach completely to pack alongside. Same chair, but now there are 4 flat components plus the legs, which just fits flat in a box. And then comes the joinery, like how all these pieces connect together. Traditional furniture uses joinery built for performance. Mortise and tenon, biscuits, dovetail, all these joints takes a craftsman hours and are impossible to undo once glued. IKEA had to invent a different language, like the camlock. It's a cylindrical bolt that you can turn with a coin. It was designed so a complete non-expert can get a rigid joint without glue, without scales, or without even having any tools. They also have other simple methods like the wooden dowels or the screws, but the most impressive ones are where you just need to slide and then it connects. Like this Lisabo table. Instead of hiding the joint, the leg slides into the visible slot. And then you can just slide this insert with a knob and just tighten up with the finger. And the same principles also applied in the IKEA packs. You just need to slide a few connecting components and you got yourself a fully customized wardrobe. And that's why PAX is the most favorite wardrobe in the world. You can just connect it in a few minutes and be proud of yourself. But after the furniture is assembled and sitting in your home, then comes the next question. Is it actually worth for daily life? And that's our second pillar of function. There's a legend inside IKEA that in the late 50s, when IKEA is growing fast across Scandinavia, Ingvar went to Milan Furniture Fair. He was visiting suppliers, watching competitors, and trying to understand where furniture is going. And at some point, he ends up inside the home of someone living in a small urban apartment in Milan. Inside the apartment, he saw heavy furniture like bed, dining table, and wardrobes pushed against the wall and covering more than half of the apartment. And Ingvar understood immediately that this is his customer group. Not the farmers who just buy one wardrobe and then pass it down to his children, but the young people who are moving from the farms to the new city, and maybe they will move again. And that's why they need furniture that fits into a small space, costs almost nothing, and can be carried up and down into small apartment buildings. And that's why IKEA's furniture is light. Not because light is cheaper, it is, but because their customer is always moving. And this is where the material choices that we talked about before stops being compromises and start being solutions. They went from solid wood to particle board to honeycomb and now even cardboard or fabric. So the function is not just how it works. The function is, does it work for this person in this space under these conditions? And then there are other functional elements like they are modular, comes with minimum instructions. But all of that only matters if the furniture lasts long enough. And that's where our third pillar comes in, the quality. Now, IKEA doesn't promise you the best quality furniture in the world, but they promise you the furniture that should last exactly as long as you expect for what you paid for. There is a concept called perceived durability. A product just needs to outlast your expectation of it, not your lifetime. Like your expectations of a 10 euro lag table is very different from your expectation of a 500 euros oak table. And that doesn't mean that IKEA cut corners. They just assume that you will not brute force anything. Like a wall shelf of around 110 centimeters is rated for 10 kilograms. So they assume that you will put some books, some boxes, and that's all. Same for the desk. A normal desk of 140 centimeters can handle around 50 kgs of distributed weight. So they expect that you'll use it ideally. But on the other hand, IKEA's quality also shows up when something is not ideal. IKEA operates in more than 60 countries with different climate, temperatures, and humidity. And the furniture has to perform same in all those situations. The particle board, the foil veneer, the cam logs, all of it has to survive warping, swelling, and separating. And then there's the assembly problem. IKEA knows that most of the people who are buying their furniture is not a handyman, or let's say, not good with tools. So someone will miss a step, someone will insert a dowel at the wrong angle, or someone will over-tighten a cam lock. So IKEA designs for the mistakes. The connection holes have a bigger tolerance, the lines gives a nice alignments, and the instruction sheet has no words. Because words get misread, but diagrams are harder to skip. But none of that quality actually matters if the materials that are going inside is destroying our planet. And that's where the fourth pillar of sustainability comes up. IKEA sells volume, enormous planetary scale volume, over 700 stores and 45 billion euros of revenue. And volume and sustainability are naturally in tension. More products means more materials, more factories, and more shipping. And IKEA's answer to that is flat pack. A flat box ships 4 times more efficiently than assembled furniture, so less air, less wasted space, and more units per truck, which also results in fewer trucks, less fuel, and less carbon per product delivered. So the thing that they invented to reduce the cost also became their most powerful weapon in sustainability. And then comes the material. IKEA is one of the largest furniture company in the world, which means how they source the wood matters a lot. Now, in most of the furniture, they use these particle wood boards. And in these boards, they use chipped wood, which is compressed and sandwiched between thin wooden boards. And then they also have a buyback program. But I think most people prefer to sell the old furniture over eBay, because in that way, the buyer can come to their house to collect it and the product will get 2 or 3 more lives before it ends up into the recycling center. And moreover, the already low price will get lower and lower. And that brings us to our final pillar, the low price. And there isn't much to explain here that you already don't know. Like the form has to be flat because flat is cheaper to ship. The function has to be simple because simple is cheaper to manufacture. The quality has to be exact enough because more than enough costs more. The sustainability has to be built into the process because add-on sustainability is expensive. So that's the philosophy of democratic design. That's how IKEA converts the high-end premium designs into everyday affordable furniture. The real question is, can you also do it for your own brand and your own furniture? The simple answer is yes, but not by copying IKEA, but by understanding the thinking behind it. And here are the 3 lessons that you can apply right now. And the first one is to make your constraint intentional. Most designers treat constraint as the enemy. the budget is too low, the material is too cheap, the timeline is too short, so they fight the constraints, or even worse, they apologize for it in the final product. But IKEA never apologized, not for the particle board, for the straight lines, for the paper in your table. They make each one of these look like a decision, not a compromise. When they removed the edges, the curves, and simplified the components, they called it minimalism or modernism. And later, they also piggybacked on ideas like form should follow function. And in all these ways, IKEA connected their new constraint furniture to these design movements and made these constraints their identity. And when a product has a strong identity, people don't just buy the product, they buy into what it says about them. Consumer identity. And that's worth more than any marketing campaign. But the real question is, once a customer buys a product, what happens after that? Do they come and buy more, or do they go somewhere else to shop? And that's where our second lesson comes in, the system of products. If you look at the PAX wardrobe, on the surface, it looks like a single wardrobe. But what IKEA actually sells is a kit, a frame in 3 widths and 2 heights. And then it has the interior fittings like shelves, drawers, shoe racks, mirror doors, all that fit into the same frame. So one customer can just buy the basic frame with 2 shelves, other can build a whole wall of wardrobes with pull-out trays, LED lights, mirror doors. So just one system but 2 different configurations, and 2 users who feel like they got exactly what they wanted. And then if you look at the calyx, it comes in 4 sizes with same unit width across all of them. You can add inserts, doors, drawers, boxes into each of these openings. And 10 years later, when you want to move to a bigger apartment, you can just buy more units and they still fit together. So every new product compounds the value of everything you already own. It kind of grows with you. And that's when customers stop shopping around. Not because they're loyal to you, but because leaving means starting again. But there's one more reason that people keep coming back to IKEA again and again. And that's the experience at each touch point. IKEA understands that the product is not just the object, it's everything that happens from the moment someone is thinking about buying the product to the moment they actually have it in their home. Think about how IKEA actually sells. You block out your entire day to drive to a store which is intentionally built outside the city. Then you enter this massive blue building and walk a one-way path through room after room of fully furnished living spaces. You eat meatballs in the middle of the shopping, you keep picking up small items on your way out, and at last you pick up your flat boxes from the warehouse. And then you carry it home to build it yourself and feel proud. Researchers call it the IKEA effect, which means people value things more when they have put efforts into making them. And when every touch point is that intentional, the store, the box, the assembly, the price, you stop wondering whether IKEA is copying or not, and you start asking what they're doing with the things that they borrowed. They took the form that lived in galleries and showrooms and asked a single uncomfortable question. What's the absolute minimum something needs to still be genuinely good? And then they answered it. In particle board, in honeycomb paper, in a flat box, and that in a price that didn't exclude anyone. So democratic design is not a philosophy that IKEA just wrote on a wall. It's a constraint that they accepted even before the design began. And I think that's something that you can take into your own work. Not the flat pack or the Allen key, but the honesty that good design should be affordable to everyone. That's all for today, and I'll see you in the next one.